Hey guys, welcome to the next video in this channel. Today we're going to be talking about a very important topic for you. I'm talking about you. You want to create a very nice portfolio and you want to know how to do a clean clay render, a wireframe render, and just like a general good option for your character, right? Like we want to present our character, our sculpture in the best possible way to get our portfolio out there and get a job. So here we go. Now, this character is one that I've shown before. This is a just like a character study that I did for Strath. There's a very famous adventure in Dungeons and Dragons called Curse of Strath. Highly recommended. If you're a beginner player and you want to play with your friends, this is a great adventure to start with. It's very easy to follow along and it's really cool. So this is a Strahd. He's like a vampire lord, and I was doing a study. No hair yet, and this is the high poly. As you can see, this is not optimized, but that's fine. We can get a render out of this without any issue. So the first thing we need to do whenever we're doing a render is we need to set up our render scene. We need to create a nice render setup, and I'm going to be showing you guys the most classic of setups, which is the 3-point light. Now we're going to be doing this my way in a different approach that most people, and I'm going to be showing you how I do it. So the first thing I need to create is an infinite background. So I'm going to go right here, create a plane, grab the back parts of the plane and just bring them up. Get this guy right here, bring it up. This one right here, bring it up. And this one right here and bring it up. And then I'm gonna hit mesh and I'm gonna smooth it twice. Just have like a very smooth option here. Now we are gonna probably make it smaller so that it fits our character. We're gonna have the character be a floating head. We can add like a base or something, but I'm gonna keep it as a floating head. And very important, this is one of the things that a lot of people miss whenever they're doing renders. They do not create a camera. You should always create a camera that's gonna be your shot cam or the camera that you're gonna be doing the renders from, because you don't want the perspective camera to be fulfilling that role. You want to make sure that you have a specific camera that does that. So I'm gonna go into rendering, click this camera button, panels, look through selected, and this right here is what my camera is seeing. So I'm gonna go on this guy right here, and I'm gonna go to the render options. I am gonna go to my options here. I'm gonna make this a 2K square, so we have a like very nice kind of like Instagram sort of like picture. Now, cameras have something called focal length, which is a number that has to do with the way that the lens is, or the distance that the lens has from the sensor. And depending on how big that distance is, we're going to have a different effect. If you have a very long focal length, you're going to have a very flat image. And you have a very low focal length, you're going to have a very wide image, and it's going to distort your character. By default, the camera is set at 35. You can see it right here on the focal length on the attribute editor for the camera. And for portrait photographs, you usually want to go to something like a 55. 55 is a little bit more, what's the word? It embellishes the character a little bit more. It's not as wide as the 35, but it's not as flat as like a 90. So you get a very nice like portrait effect. So we're going to go with something like this. And I'm going to add 3 little spheres here that a lot of people add on their renders. For this sort of presentation, it's really not super important to have them, but I want to add them just to show you what they do and why people add them. You usually are going to see like 3 spheres in here, and they're going to have different materials. I'm going to explain what materials are in just a second. So let's move this here so that it's a little bit nicer here. Now I'm going to go into panels, and I'm going to say tier of copy. That way I have a copy of my render screen, or my render view, right here. And I can go into perspective, modify the lights, modify the objects, modify everything, and I'm going to see here what we're going to be rendering. So let's start with the light setup, and we're going to start by including a skydome light, which is just a basic light that's going to go over the whole thing. And I'm going to add an HDR to the object. Now, we already have an HDR from the past projects that we've done. So let me set the project here. There we go. So here in the source images, we have this Decor Shop, I believe, is the one that I like. Yeah, so as you can see, it's not a studio light, but it's good. It has a lot of different temperatures and colors all the way around, so it gives us a nice, very like normal or casual look. And I'm gonna save this real quick. Let me save this as clay render. Oh, we already have clay render. Now we're gonna see clay render Strath. There we go. And we can give it a go, just with default materials, default stuff. I'm just gonna hit render here. And this is what we got. So as you can see, it looks okay. I'm gonna stop it. Let me make this slightly smaller. I'm gonna go to my options here on the render options. Go into system, change this to GPU so that it renders a little bit faster on my computer. Change this to camera shape 1 because we want to see what happens on the camera, not on the big one. And here we go. We got this very nice render. So as you can see, this image that we have is fulfilling a very nice like field light role because it's giving us a very nice ambient light, but we don't have any defining like sources of light or shadows, and that's making it look a little bit boring, right? This doesn't look as appealing as what we might expect. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna start playing around with my lights, and the way I like to calibrate my lights whenever I'm doing any sort of render is I like to turn off my HDR. So I'm gonna place this in at 0. I'm gonna add my first light, so I'm gonna say light, area light. Let's move it up. And I'm gonna decide where I want this light. Now this character is supposed to be a vampire, so I'm probably gonna go for a little bit of a dramatic light. Therefore, I'm probably gonna go for like a high light right here. So very, very high there, so that we get some very deep shadows on the eyes and underneath the nose and underneath the chin. Otherwise, if we wanted to do a little bit more traditional portrait photography, I would do something like what I have right here, which is the light hitting me pretty much straight on, so that the face is really, really clean. However, if I were to render this, we're gonna see nothing. And the reason we're seeing nothing is usually the Arnold lights, and in most renders it happens this way, the exposure is really weak. Like the intensity of one is just too weak. So I'm gonna go here into the exposure. Let's start with a number like 10. You can see it's starting to look nicer here, but still not there. This is gonna be my main light, so I really want to punch this light like quite high. Probably 20 is way too much. Let's try 15. See, so 15 is already burning up a little bit of the object right here. You can see it. So that's why it's very important. This is where those little spheres come into play. These little spheres are we're gonna be assigning some special materials so that we can see how colors look on an object. So let's do that real quick. This sphere right here, I'm gonna assign a new material. It's gonna be an Arnold AI standard, and I'm gonna call this material M white. And this is gonna be on the color a pure white. No specular, just a flat white. This one right here, I'm gonna assign a new material, Arnold AI standard surface, and this is gonna be M gray. And we're gonna assign a 50% grade, so I'm gonna go here to the value and say 0.5. And again, no weight. So it's gonna be a mid-level gray. And finally, this one right here, assign new material, another AI standard surface. And this one's gonna have no color, and it's gonna be a complete metal. So I'm gonna increase the IOR to something like a 5, and the roughness all the way down to 0. So no roughness. So now, if you take a look, you're gonna see that we're gonna have a chrome ball, a white sphere, and a gray sphere. And this is very important because these materials are gonna allow me to see how the light of the general environment is affecting everything. So if I see that any of these things like the highlights or the shadows or the lights are really, really bright, that means that my lights might be a little bit too bright. And it's important because right now, yes, the character is white, so I can see it on the character. But if we were to add a texture to the character, sometimes colors play a trick on our eyes, and it's a little bit difficult to see how intense our lights are because certain colors absorb light a little bit better and certain don't. So we might get a weird look on the character, and unless we see it on the spheres, it's going to be a little bit difficult to pinpoint what's going on, whether it's the light or it's a shadow or a reflection or something. So this one right here, I think it's very balanced. As you can see, the whites is not super white. The value of the white is not extreme, and we have a nice effect. Now we can go into the HDR, turn it up again, intensity on 1, and now if we see both of them together, we're of course gonna see a more complete picture of the character. But now you can see that the light's actually burning a little bit more. Like this is really, really white. So anytime you add another light to your scene, you need to be very careful about balancing things out. So we need to decide, do we bring the HDR down or do we bring the main light down? And both of them are valid options. Sometimes some of those options are gonna work better than the other ones. I really like the reflections here. Like these reflections look really, really clean, really nice. So I'm tempted to leave the HDR as it is and just modify the key light. So let me bring this here, grab the key light, and I'm gonna bring the exposure down to something like 13. Let's give it a go. That's way too low. As you can see, we lose a lot of the nice effect that we had. So let's bring it back to like 14. That's a little bit better. Still a little bit low. I would like a little bit more highlight here on the head, but it's not bad. It's looking a lot better. And now we're gonna go to 14.5. One very important thing about this, hopefully you guys were good at math. I was good at math in high school, but then we hit all those derivatives and integrals, I think they're called, and I was really bad at those. So exposure has to do with exponential growth. And if you've seen the difference between linear versus exponential, a linear growth, as you can see, goes pretty standard, like it just like continuously grows in a very linear fashion. And the exponential, it starts slow, but as it increases, it goes really, really fast. It increases in a very like exponential way, right? So I think the formula is it's the square. So you're multiplying the number by the number or something like that. Some of you guys are way better at math than me. So yeah. So when we're moving exposure here, be very careful not to increase the numbers too high, because it's gonna really, really bring your lights super, super high, and we don't like that, or we don't want that. I am gonna bring this thing down though, and one of the cool things about exposure is that you can actually go negative into the exposure, because when you multiply two negative numbers, you're gonna get a positive. So I'm gonna say minus 1 on the exposure, and that's gonna darken it up just a little bit. You can see here the reflections. Again, that's why the chrome ball is really important. The reflections are gonna be a little bit nicer, and that's gonna give me a little bit more contrast on the shadows. I think -1 is too much, so I'm gonna say -0.5. And that way we keep some of the elements. We can still go in Photoshop and do a little bit of post-production. We can do like levels and adjustments and stuff. But you usually want your renders to be as close as possible to the final result. Now we're gonna be adding the next and final light. We already have a key light, which is my spotlight or my rectangular light. We already have a fill light, which is my HDR. Now we just need something called a rim light. And the rim light is the light that is gonna make sure our character pops from the background. And what I'm gonna do, so I'm going to say Arnold lights, create another area light, and I'm going to position this area light here on the back of the character, pointing to the side of the head like this. Let's start with a high exposure, like a 15. And if we take a look, you're going to see that we get this very nice like rim effect. This is of course way too much. So I'm going to show you one trick, because as you can see, this is also bleeding onto the background, and I don't want the light to bleed onto the background. I would like the light to be a little bit more focused towards the character. The way we're going to do that is I'm going to decrease the spread. By decreasing the spread, we're pretty much telling the light, hey, you're not going to be spreading as much, you're just going to be going straight at the character, like what you're seeing right here. And as you can see, this is looking very good. Of course, the exposure is way too much, so let's just bring it down. It's just a little bit of something that we want to add there. And this rim light is really good, because it's going to allow us to separate the character from the background, and it's going to make the character pop a little bit more. So probably a little bit more. There we go. That looks great. And I'm going to use temperatures. I'm going to change the color temperature. I'm going to make this light a little bit cooler, so that we have a little bit of contrast. So as you can see, this is a little bit of it has a little bit of a blue hue. I can also go to the main light, use color temperature, and bring it to the warm side. I think that's way too warm though, so something like that. And that's gonna make the whole scene a little bit more balanced. Now, again, as you can see here, the little spheres are allowing me to see or appreciate how intense or how strong the lights are. And if I ever see that something's like really bright, I would adjust it. So that's why these little spheres right here are really important. They are very useful for look depth. You've probably seen them when people do like scene tests or set tests. They will photograph spheres and a little like a color palette to make sure that all of the colors are properly calibrated. And those tools are useful for the people down in the post-production section where they do color correction. So it looks nice for us as 3D artists. Having these things, it makes it looks fancy. It seems it looks like we know what we're doing. But I do use these spheres for sort of like a diagnostics of the general scene. And there we go. That's a clay render. However, I'm gonna give you a bonus. We're gonna go a little bit further here. I don't want this character to have this very boring, just like a Lambert color, which is fine. If you want to present it like this, that's fine. But I actually want him to have a clay material for it to look like clay, and a little bit of shine, a little bit of surface detail. So for those of you that are not aware, there's the Substance 3D Assets site. If you subscribe to the 3D to Substance Painter, you get every single month a couple of materials that you can get. I believe it's 30 materials that you can download. And there's this material right here, which is a wet clay material. So I'm gonna download the SVSR, which is the file that contains all the information for this material. And in the newer Mayas, there is a very nice plugin, which is a Substance plugin, that allows us to utilize this SVSR file. So I'm gonna save this in the data folder. I'm gonna go into Maya here. And if we go into the Substance file, Substance tab here, I can go on this option right here, which is the import. Where is it? Oh, first we need to load the plugin, of course. No, that's fine. I'm just gonna go into the Hypershade. And here in the Hypershade, I'm gonna press tab and I'm gonna write Substance. I think the plugin is turned off, so Windows, Settings and Preferences, Plugin Manager. Let's look for Substance. There we go, let's load all. I'm actually gonna set this to outload because it's a very useful plugin to have and it's not that difficult. So I'm gonna go here, Substance, and I'm gonna say Substance Texture. And there in the Substance node, we're gonna load the file that we just downloaded, this clay wet. We're gonna hit open. And I am gonna create this for our node right here, create shader network. And I'm just gonna click create shader network. And what this will do, as you can see, is it will automatically create the material, plug in every single file that we need, the normal, the, what's the word, the normal, the roughness, the color, everything into a very nice material here, which I'm gonna rename to M wet clay. And everything's pretty much done for us. It creates the textures that we can later save into our disk and gets it ready for what we want. Now, what I'm gonna do here is I am gonna change this to here. I'm gonna do a, we don't need the height, so let's get rid of that one because we don't want displacement. And I'm gonna change this to like a 2K texture. There we go. And I'm gonna say bake substance outputs. That's fine. We're gonna save them on save, and there we go. So now we can just, I'm gonna grab this guy, and normally I would do we would need to do a proper UV. Now, unfortunately, this guy does not have a proper UV. As you can see, it has no UV at all. So what I'm gonna do is something that it's not super recommended, but it's gonna work for this particular case. Usually you would have your low poly and everything. I'm just using a decimated model from ZBrush. So I'm gonna go into this camera, and I'm gonna say Arnold, UVs, UV mapping, and I'm gonna use a camera-based projection. UV planar, I'm just gonna say camera. I'm gonna hit apply. So what this is gonna do is it's pretty much gonna snapshot the whole thing, which I think I need to go in here. So where's the camera? Panels, look to selected, there we go. So I'm just gonna go here, select this guy and hit apply again. So we're pretty much taking a picture and projecting a UV straight there. So anything that it's looking at the camera, the mapping is gonna work perfectly fine. The sides and everything on the back, it's gonna be horrible, but since we're not gonna be seeing it, we're kind of fine. Again, the proper way to do this would be to get a nice UV, and that will be the answer. But for now, we're just gonna keep it like this. Let's save real quick. Click the character, right click, assign existing material. We're gonna assign the wet clay. And if we hit number 6, you're gonna see that there's the texture. Very nice, all throughout the element. And now it's just a matter of going into our render. And let's take a look at how this looks. It, of course, will convert all the textures into what it needs. And we should get the render shortly. There we go. So as you can see, this looks more like a traditional wet sculpture or wet clay, and it's gonna pop a little bit more than just having a basic Lambert. Just like the shine and everything is gonna really help the character. It's gonna break up the surface a little bit, so it's gonna make him look really good. Now this one, of course, is way too shiny. So let's go back into the Hypershade. And again, one of the cool things about this guy right here, the Substance node, is that if you go into the node, similar to what you would do in Substance, all the information is back here. So we have the color and everything. So I'm just gonna push the roughness up and give it another go. You can see that definitely lowers the roughness of the character. I actually think we need to bake them. So let me increase this a little bit more. And let's bake the outputs. There we go. Let's just give it 1 second here. Try again. There we go. You can see the shine is a little bit less intense. I actually do like this one. Again, it looks kind of like a metal statue as well, so it makes it look very, very cool. You can see the reflections and everything. We already know how to clean the render, right, by upping the samples, and we get this very, very nice effect. And as you can see, having this be a dark element is gonna really make it look a little bit nicer, because it's gonna look like a, well, yeah, like a nice character with nice bounces and stuff. So this would be my render. I would just clean the samples and wait for this to render nicely. But I'm gonna do something else here. I'm gonna hide this for a second. And here on the files, I believe I have the low poly. So let's bring the low poly in. Where is it? There we go. So as you can see, this low poly right here, let's turn this on again, so we can find the exact position. So that will be it. Let's turn this off. So this is the actual like topology of the character, and we can assign the same material that we have. This one actually does have, I believe, proper UVs. Let's check real quick. Yeah, it has proper UVs. So if we were to take a render now, or make a render out of this, we won't have all the details because this does not have any normal map or anything, but we have the proper topology. So as you can see, we have that nice effect here. So I'm going to show you now how to do a wireframe render, and I'm going to be using this other head, this, what's the word, this clean head, to show you the material that we're going to be using. So the material is super simple. A couple of years ago, doing a wireframe render was always very tricky because you had to like calibrate things and make sure that the edges were showing and stuff. Nowadays, most renderers, especially like Arnold, has a specific material. So I'm just going to go here, assign new material. And in the Arnold materials, there's this one called AI wireframe at the very bottom. So you're just going to select that one. And if we render, that's it. Like that's the wireframe right there. Now, I don't want the triangle, or I don't want the edge type to be triangles, so I'm going to keep it as polygons. If we render, there's the polygons. And we can choose which color we're going to be using for the render. So one thing I could do to make this look a little bit better, because I don't want this just like a white mask, I'm going to increase the width. Let's do 2 pixels so that the wireframe is a little bit more marked. And if we go into the hypershade, one thing we can do, and this is where knowing your nodes comes into play. Here's the, is this the one? Where is it? AI wireframe. So I'm just gonna bring this thing here. And what I wanna do is on the fill color of the AI wireframe, I'm gonna plug in the exact same color that we had from the clay. That way, what I'm expecting to see here is, which is not happening, I'm expecting to see the clay color and then this layer or this thing on top. You know what? I'm going to show you another little trick because I'm not sure why this is not working here. Let's try. Let's break that connection. Yeah, it should be working. I'm going to change the line color to white because I want the line to be white since the color should be dark. AI wireframe. Let's give it another go. There we go. So now we have the color of the clay, and then on top we have the wireframe. Now here's what I wanted to show you. This is one way you can do it, just like a quick wireframe render on top of your character. But here's another thing you can do. I'm gonna go back to the to this one, just delete the, well, not that one because we need that one. Just delete this connection. And if we render now, we're gonna get this black on top of white, which is exactly what we want. If we take this image, we can bring it into Photoshop, select the little guy here, the head of my guy on Photoshop, and then multiply these lines on top of the character. This is probably the one you're seeing on the, what's the word, on the thumbnail, but I'm gonna do it real quick here. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna save file, save image. Let me create a new folder here because we're gonna do some cool things here. So I'm gonna call this wireframe. Now I'm gonna cheat a little bit because I'm gonna hide this guy, unhide this other one, the cool one, render, the one that has like all this clay and stuff, the nice render. Let's just wait a couple of seconds for this to clean up a little bit. Let's stop it right there. That's good enough for this example. Let's say leave this as a render. And now let's open Photoshop. Let's open our images. And we're gonna do some magic. Now I'm gonna show you another thing that we can do here. Just to help me a little bit. It's not an advanced trick, it's just something extra. I'm gonna grab all the objects that are not my character, add them to a display layer and turn it off. And I'm gonna do one more render here. And the reason why I want to do this render is because I want the alpha channel. I need to grab this guy, and I'm gonna say visibility on the camera 0. And now, as you can see, we have an alpha channel. It's gonna be our mask, pretty much. Let's stop it, File, Save Image, and I'm gonna save it as Strath Mask. Oh wait, I messed up there. We need to save it in a format that has transparency, such as a Targa, so .tga. Now, if we jump into Photoshop and we bring all the images here, the render, the wireframe, and the mask, what they can do is the following. Can do a little bit of image processing. I can grab this guy, bring it here, or actually on the render here, grab the mask. So here on the channels, I'm just gonna control and click on the mask so that we get a selection. Or actually, I'm gonna control and click here. I'm gonna say, I'm gonna create a mask here to break the silhouette, and then I'm gonna say right click, and I'm gonna just control click, or actually alt click to go into the mask, select the mask, control C to copy the mask, go into the render, create a mask here, alt click the mask, and control V to paste the mask. And now what we're gonna see is the following. So we're cutting everything from the thing. It doesn't look like much, but you can see that the cut is right there. And then I'm just gonna click this, and I'm gonna set this to screen. Which is screen. What screen will do, as you can see, is it will remove the black color, and we're gonna keep only the lines. Now, of course, I'm gonna use a soft round brush here. And on the mask, let's paint like a black mask around like this areas. So it looks like the wireframe is kind of like fading. And of course, we're gonna just reduce the opacity. We don't want as much opacity. So now, this is a perfectly fine render where I show the wireframe of my character on top of the shaded effect. Of course, the line I think here is a little bit thick. I could have gone with the number 1, but it's a very nice and easy way to show both of the elements. So you would save your image like this, your traditional effect, and then you would save another one like this, so that people that see your work know that you know how topology should work for a character face. And that's it, guys. This is it for this video. I know we went a little bit longer than usual, but I really wanted to show you this because it's an amazing tool that every modeler should have to present their works, because renders and the presentation are always going to be the first thing people see about your work. And if you have very, very crappy renders or very bad renders, people are not going to appreciate all the work and effort you put into the models and into the topology and everything. So take this advices for your own work, and yeah, that's it. Make sure to leave a like, make sure to subscribe, share the video if you like it, leave us in the comments what you think about this method, and I'll see you back tomorrow. Bye-bye.